One. Hey, CFC friends and family. It is a snowy afternoon here in Northern Virginia. We don't know where it is that you're watching from. Maybe you're in Northern Virginia. Maybe you're someplace else. If you're someplace else, hopefully it's sunny and nice and you can wear sandals outside. Here, you don't want to do that. You might get your feet wet. So it is snowy and we're getting lots and lots of it right now in Northern Virginia at the time of recording this. So we are excited that you joined us. Pastor Brian is joining us today. This will be our final Q&A session for 2020 as we're rolling into the holiday season and lots of travels and things that are going down. So this will probably be the last time that we do this until it's 2021. And I'm kind of hoping magically when 2021 rolls over that all of 2020 is gone. Is that too much to ask?
Probably. But hey, one can wish. Hey, just give a shout out. I thought I'd wear my red shirt today, a little Christmas, but it's also red and gray, so it also doubles as a little bit of the Buckeyes at the same time.
There you go. Yep, I'm down with that. Usually I wear this shirt is my Buckeye shirt. I usually wear it on Wednesdays. I don't know. I just started doing that, and it's just kind of what I do. So
yeah, there you go. So
anyway. So let's talk a little bit about, we're going to talk a little bit about week 3 of the Something series, and then we're going to look forward to week 4 and week 5, which is Christmas Eve, a little bit as we kind of roll out this discussion. And so I thought we'd jump in by talking about Christmas movies this week, because on Sunday, you laid down some truth for us from the stage that Die Hard is a Christmas movie. So, and if you disagree with that, feel free to argue with us in the comments below if you'd like to try to weigh in on that.
But they'll be wrong, but they can argue.
You'd be wrong, yeah. I posted on social media about that on Monday, and I actually kind of thought I'd get more pushback, but I think I mostly just got agreement. So
we basically have proselytized the truth out on that one, and people have accepted it, I think.
There you go. So let's talk about Christmas movies for a minute. What is your favorite Christmas movie to watch? What do you look forward to watching every season?
There's there is a traditional Christmas movie and then a non-traditional one that if I can catch, I watch. A traditional, It's a Wonderful Life. It is the standard. It is so much deep in that. I love it. Jimmy Stewart is great. And every once in a while I just walk around the house and go hot dog and go from that. And non-traditional, it is an old one. It is a spin on the Christmas story. And it is called Scrooged when Bill Murray is in it. So, think of your better man. Put a little love in your heart. Little Annie Lennox 80s music at the same time in there. So I kind of like it.
There you go.
Yeah, that's me.
That works. Cool. All right, so let's jump in and talk a little bit about week 3. Mm-hmm. So we talked about mystery from the perspective of Zechariah. And why do you think, as Christians, as humans, we struggle with the mystery of faith and taking God at His word in the midst of taking our next step? You threw in a quote there from
Johnny Erickson. Yeah.
There you go. I had the name in my mind, and just as I said that, I went, I'm not going to remember it, and then I did.
It became a mystery, right? There you go.
So why do you think we have such a hard time with that mystery in terms of our faith?
I think for every person, it may be a little different. But there are some commonalities, and it's one, we live in a broken world. And so oftentimes we project the brokenness of this world and our broken experiences in the world onto the goodness and the greatness of God. And so a lot of times in our personal lives, the mystery in the relationship with someone else has turned out what we would perceive to be something that is not necessarily that good. And so when we find ourselves in a place, certainly where in the middle of the mystery it seems to be challenging, I think we have a little bit of, if I can use this term appropriately, a little bit of post-traumatic stress disorder with other things in our life, and we apply that to God. And so those are those moments when we have to continue. Remember, we don't have to know all the way in. That's why I love that Johnny Erickson Tata quote. She's talking about, you don't have to know all the way to the end of the misty future. You just have to take that next step. And so one of the things in my own life, when I find myself in mystery, is I've stopped trying to do, to the best that I can, what I used to always do. And that's when I talked about in actual mystery movies, I try to figure out the end, right? I try to figure it out. So I've kind of just sort of abandoned that idea that is the priority, but instead just hear from God, what is my next step in this moment? And for me personally, in my own life, I found it to be much more peace and life-giving. You can think of probably nothing greater right now than 2020 and all the different mystery that comes around it, from people's health or people's opinions or the stress about how this is going to happen or those. And I'm not going to be able to figure it out. Doesn't mean I won't know it at some point, but right now it's just not. And so for me, in the midst of the mysteries that God has me in, let's take out the big overwhelming things, because I think that's another thing, that we can get overwhelmed in the mystery, and so then we become paralyzed and don't do anything. But instead say, God, just what do you want me to do today?
Yeah.
And if today is too much, what do you want me to do in this hour? And if hour is too much, what do you want me to do in this minute? And if it frames it this way, maybe you say this way, maybe what you don't want me to do today, maybe what you don't want me to do, find that way. And God is faithful to answer our prayers.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So if we remove the challenge from our walk with God, you kind of mentioned this towards the end, that as followers of God, no one's really exempt from challenge.
Yeah.
And so if we go into thinking about our relationship with God and removing that challenge from our relationship with God, what do you think we've lost in terms of that relationship?
Well, I think it starts with, we have to redefine challenge as not always being bad. It's just not. Challenge is resistance, and resistance is growth, right? And we have to grow in every relational area. And there's actually no way to grow in the way that God has created us as human beings, has created the world, without some set of resistance. In fact, what we discover in the natural world that we're in, without resistance, people actually get worse. There's got to be some sort of resistance. And so I think if we remove the resistance, if we remove that challenge, we will not be able to be fully formed disciples. And if our goal really is to be, as we say at church, spirit-directed people, discipling people to know Jesus as Lord, I can't really know the Lordship of Jesus in my life to the extent that I need to be until I have resistance, till I have that challenge. And while I would like to just, magically, I think, just wake up one day and go, boom, everything's there. That's just not how God has designed it. Now, I'm sure when we get to heaven, we can ask God, why did you design it this way? And if he so chooses, he'll answer us, and his answer will be like, oh, it's brilliant, right? It is.
Right.
But right now, some of that is still a mystery, and we just have to trust him in that.
Yeah, and I think any athlete knows that's the case. I mean, you don't go into the weight room and train with air, because that's not helpful. You got to train with some weight, provide some resistance there. So,
and we don't view that as negative in that in that context. And so that is really one of the things that it starts with. Let's reframe resistance and challenge as not always being negative. And even sometimes when it's negative, a reminder that God promises not to waste those negative challenges in our life. He'll make us more like Jesus. That's Romans 8, verse 29. 28 says he works at all things for good. But the good is, we've said this over and over again when we talk, to make us more like Jesus in verse 29.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to tangent off that just a little bit. It'll be interesting to see as the church has grown through 2020, because I think all of us look back on 2020, and I think I said this to somebody the other day when I was talking to them. I said, I think 2020 will be the 9/11 moment for some people in this generation. We'll look back on 2020 and say, not in that moment where 9/11 happened and everybody looks at that date, but I think everybody will go back and say, oh, I remember where I was in 2020 when we went through that.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting, as I think all of us want to be on the other side of it, but it'll be interesting to see how the church grows through 2020 and what the church is able to do coming out of that in terms of that resistance. And, because it's been a challenge, for a lot of things in terms of church wise, but, that's likely to lead to some really good growth.
So. Absolutely. And I think your analogy and your example of 9/11, while that was a singular moment and this is an elongated year, really applies from the standpoint of that what you saw in that was it really reminded the church in lots of ways about some things that are most important. In 2020, in some ways, is also really reminding us about what is most important. Not that we don't know that intellectually, but when you get to the place where you can only do those certain things and your distractions change and all of that, it's a wonderful focusing thing. And I'm excited to see, what it is, some of the, I guess is leading into that next question. So, some of the miracles, right, that God's going to bring from the mysteries that we're in right now.
Yeah. So let's tackle that question a little bit. What you mentioned, the mysteries, that God's mysteries are often preludes to God's miracles. Towards the end of the message on Sunday, where have you seen that show up recently in your life?
Recently, wow. I think for me, it's growing closer in my relationship, specifically with my kids. right? I've just had more opportunities to be a bad dad and a good dad, a penitent or repentant dad with my kids, and a Christ following great dad with my kids than I've ever had.
Yeah.
But in the same way, this way of working and this way of doing anything in truthfully in my church life, in my, I use this term very loosely, my professional life, my work, it's been nothing but mystery and complicated. It's been, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. It's been more complicated than ever. It's been more challenging than ever. It's been that. But I wouldn't have gotten some of this without that. And so, another thing that I was just talking to a group of people recently is that this sort of principle I'm trying to live by right now is, don't let the weeds overpower the flowers. And whenever I say that, I can always hear Pastor Randy Haynes in my head saying something like that. And it's just this idea that as we're going through difficulty and challenge, we can't deny that there are weeds. We can't. But let that not be our only focus, right? For those of us who are perfectionists or those of us who are wired a particular way, we have a tendency to see a field full of flowers and only notice the weeds, right? And then there are other people who only see the flowers and ignore the weeds, and then eventually the weeds take over. Right. And so I'm hoping that Jesus is helping me better in these weed moments to see the flowers that are growing with my kids, more time with my family, and still some things in church, just opportunities to do some things different. I mean, we're having this conversation right now in a way that we may never thought of before. We may never thought about doing it. And I don't know, maybe 3 other people enjoy it, but I know you and me enjoy it. So there's some value to that. I think we've talked about that before, right?
Yeah, we have. And I think, I always look forward to this time every week just to kind of dig into this a little bit, but it is kind of a fun moment in the week. And I hope that people enjoy that. But I think you're right in that something that I had forgotten when we first moved here, we lived close enough to the church that I could go home for lunch, and often would go home for lunch because I lived, 7 minutes away. Now I live 25 minutes away. Driving home from the church for lunch isn't all that feasible most of the time. And so, but I've had more lunch with my kids in the last 9 months, sometimes than I want, but there have been some good moments, and there have been some, I wish I didn't have to eat lunch at home moments too.
Yeah.
So,
no, I think I think that is a great example of just saying, all right, here's a mystery, here's a miracle I'm getting right now. Yeah. And I want to make sure that sometimes the miracles we see from God's mysteries aren't necessarily directly related to that mystery. There's going to be a miracle, I think, later on he's going to show about all this sort of stuff. But what are these just sort of miracles right now? And I think when I'm able to see those, when I'm able to focus on that, then I'm able to be more at rest. Then I'm able to be at those things we've been talking about in the series at whole, more trustful, more, living from peace. And then what we're going to talk about this coming up Sunday, I'm able to wait a whole lot better.
Yeah. So what do we have to look forward to this week? This weekend coming up is week 4, and then Christmas Eve is kind of week 5. Some of the same themes. So what do we have to look forward to the next couple of weeks?
So this week we're going to be again in the book of Luke, and we're going to be talking about someone who engages Mary after Jesus is born, about the 8th day when Mary and Joseph bring Jesus to the temple. His name's Simeon, and I've entitled this sermon "Something Worth Waiting For." And I think in the middle of the wait, there's this question, right? And I'm going to use this at the beginning of my sermon. So, if you're listening to this today, still tune in, right? If you've ever been on a road trip, right? If you've ever been on a road trip, at some point, when all the games are done or all the different things are done, there is a child in the back, whether you were the child or you have children, that ask this question: are we there yet? And underneath that question, are we there yet, is another question that's really in their mind, whether they know how to express it or not. And it goes like this: is what I'm going through worth what I'm going to receive when I get there? It's just that simple, because all they're seeing is the difficulty and the challenge. And that's us right now. I think we are in the midst of waiting. And I think internally we can be asking this question: are we there yet, God? Are we there yet, God? But really what we're saying, is it worth it? And the thing I want us to be reminded of is that we've never, ever been in a moment where God puts us that we wait, that it isn't worth it. We will not arrive to the other end of whatever God has it and be disappointed like we showed up at an Airbnb down south and it's just a crappy thing that didn't look like what it did on the internet, right? That's not how God works. Right. And so in the midst of it, I just want to continue to encourage us, because Simeon, for example, is a man that had a promise from God that waited a very, very long time. But when it was fulfilled, you didn't see Simeon go, well, that wasn't worth it. He's like, it's absolutely worth it. Whatever God has us in the waiting for, it is worth it. And I want to assure us of that this Sunday and tell us why we can know that. And then we'll hop forward Christmas Eve. Anyone's listening, this probably knows already. We're doing a little bit different. We're going to have just online services, 4, 5, 6, and 7 o'clock p.m. You can tune in, and it'll be playing right there online. People like you and others will be right there engaging people who are online at the time. And appropriately enough, we have entitled this Christmas Eve sermon, this time together, called "Something Different." And the key of what I'm trying to bring out is, just because something's different doesn't mean it can't be something good. And there's no greater proof of that than the most different thing we could have ever imagined: God taking on human flesh, bringing the most good to us. That's the truth of the gospel. So that's where we'll be as we find ourselves on Sunday and then the following Thursday.
Yeah, so join us. And this Sunday, one thing you failed to mention a moment
Oh,
ago,
yeah.
not that it was a big deal, not that it was a big deal that you missed it, just want to point it out. If you are looking for an in-person service, we actually are having 2 in-person services this weekend on the 20th. We've been doing just one at 9:30, but you can join us at 9:30 or 11 in person, or you can join us at 9:30 and 11 online as well on Sunday. So in
Yeah,
case,
and we understand that this Sunday is, kind of a big Sunday for many people, and there may be more people who want to come. And so, just as you're listening to this, one of the reasons why we're holding it at 9:30 and 11 is to make sure there's plenty of space for social distancing, and so that someone doesn't have to ask themselves, if I come, am I going to be, too close, or that sort of stuff. We want to try to relieve that to as much as we can. So we have 2 services this Sunday.
yeah, so we'd love to have you join us on Sunday the 20th or on the 24th, Christmas Eve, either one, whichever you choose, both preferably. Invite somebody, plan to be there. So with this being the last Q&A of 2020, any parting words for 2020, your holiday greetings, or anything you want to sign off with, kind of as we wrap out?
Merry Christmas. And I believe you know the rest. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that's at work within us. To him be the glory. Can that just be so? To him be the glory in this year and in next year, in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, wherever you're at today, we pray that over you, as we do every time when we wrap out one of these things. So we are excited to see what God's going to do in 2021. And we hope that wherever you're at, that you have a great and blessed Christmas and an amazing start to your new year. And we will talk to you soon in 2021.